Hello you beautiful misfits, my name is Matt and this is the first in a series of briefish videos covering all of the major conferences of E3 2016 because I grossly overestimate my own capabilities, starting with the EA conference because that was the first one. As with my E3 coverage of last year, I will of course be skipping the more boring or trivial bits, like these two pre-show Burks for example, whose lighting technician had presumably fallen down some stairs and broken their neck or something. The entire affair began 8 minutes later than scheduled with a sinister homage to John Carpenter's They Live, only instead of billboards with subliminal commands like consume and obey on them, there were giant screens briefly flashing phrases like "It's time to play," "Play to live," "Rule," and "Win." There might even have been one that said "Kill your parents," although if there was I didn't spot it. After that came Andrew Wilson, EA CEO and the secret 6th replicant in Blade Runner, to officially open the proceedings, promising among other things a new type of show while sheepishly as any synthetic humanoid can, admitting that they couldn't give us everything we wanted in a mere 60 minutes. How about less sports games? Crap. Can you give me that? What am I saying? Of course you can't, but more on that later. After briefly cutting to EA's Peter Moore streaming himself live at EA Play in London, Andrew Wilson then took a moment to welcome, among others, our players and influencers. Ugh, influencers. I despise that term, I really do. Yeah, that's precisely the kind of word that a replicant would use. Before promising the future of EA Star Wars games, along with Mass Effect 4, various sports gubbins that barely anyone who watches these things gives more than a single shit about, Battlefield 1 and Titanfall 2. Sadly, they weren't all shown in that order, otherwise I could have planned my toilet breaks better. Titanfall 2 was first, and Vince Zampella, co-founder of Respawn Entertainment, came out on stage to tell us all about it while also showing off some footage. Cue lots of titans falling, and lots of wall-running soldiers wall running while shooting their guns, a bit like a game of Overwatch where everyone is either D.Va or Lucio. In short, it's more Titanfall, although Respawn Entertainment claim to have taken criticisms of the first Titanfall on board and are promising 6 new titans, expanded pilot gameplay, more customization options and a deep progression system, among other shiny new things, including an actual single player campaign which was sorely lacking to the point of complete and utter non-existence in the first game. Well, it had a campaign of sorts, 2 to be exact, but there were multiplayer ones that you had to do with other people. What Respawn promised this time round, however, is a proper solitary, on-your-own experience for antisocial bastards like me who prefer killing things without having a 12-year-old squealing into my ear. The story in a nutshell is a boy and his bot, with the bot being one of the titular titans, designation BT-7274, whose original pilot was killed in action, and the boy being some soldier bloke called
Rifleman Jack Cooper.
With no other option available to them, allegedly, Shooty Man and Optimus Prime Jr. here team up to wreak havoc on both the enemy and the local wildlife, all while Titan BT-7274 makes sure to follow his 3 prime directives.
Protocol 1. Link to pilot. Protocol 2. Uphold the mission. Protocol 3. Protect the pilot.
Naturally, for spoiler reasons, they don't mention the secret Protocol 4, whereby any attempt to arrest a senior EA employee results in shutdown. But yeah, the Titans in Titanfall seem to have some rudimentary sense of self-awareness now, if not true sentience, meaning players will presumably be encouraged to form an attachment to their hulking metal comrade over the course of the story. I think we all know how this single-player campaign is going to end, don't we?
You stay. I go.
Jokes aside, Titanfall 2 looks pretty snazzy, albeit more of the same, and will also be coming to Sony consoles this time, which is nice, but then the gameplay in Titanfall 1 itself wasn't the game's main problem. The majority of criticism concerned things like a small number of multiplayer modes, the 6 vs 6 player limit, the lack of clan support and customization, and no means to create private matches. Whether Titanfall 2 can build and maintain a decent sized player base depends on how much of this feedback Respawn have listened to. After all that mechs and shooting malarkey, it was, as we've come to expect and dread from an EA conference, the sports section. The first of 2 such segments, both interminably arse-numbingly long, starting with the John Madden's Hand Egg Year of Our Lord 2017 Anno Domini, or just Madden 17 for short.
For their playoff lives, a snap, hold, it's blocked! Saying live fast and die young is what they told us.
Being the best in the world often inspires awe, reverence, respect. Both Problem and Serious Mo have a claim to the top of the Madden world.
If you're interested in Madden 17, you're going to buy it anyway, so there's no point me talking about it, while the rest of you undoubtedly give as few shits about it as I do. So let's move on, shall we? After what seemed like a godforsaken eon in sports hell, BioWare's Aaron Flynn came out to tell us all about Mass Effect Andromeda, specifically how far we'll be going from the region of space liberated by Commander Shepard at the end of Mass Effect 3.
You travel millions of light years to the Andromeda Galaxy. You wake up. Now what?
Stay in bed for a while? Check Twitter? Maybe have some toast? The actual trailer he brought along with him started off very Star Trek Enterprise with shots of Earth and current mundane space technology before the new protagonist's ship, the Tempest, jumps in and heads towards the same desert planet we saw in the last trailer. In cinematic form, of course, actual gameplay was starkly absent, except perhaps these bits with the new Mako, maybe? A fact I find somewhat disconcerting for a game supposedly less than a year from release. Come on BioWare, you must have more than pre-done cinematics and behind-the-scenes studio shots to show us by now, because aside from these silhouetted floating bird hydra manta ray creatures, the rest of the alien faces on show were very familiar to anyone with a passing knowledge of the Mass Effect universe. Even this supposedly brand new alien creature looks almost exactly like a Yarg, a species seen in Mass Effect 2's Shadow Broker DLC and a side mission in Mass Effect 3. Indeed, for a game supposedly set in a distant galaxy millions of light years from ours, there seems very little here to differentiate Mass Effect Andromeda from any of the previous Mass Effect installments. Andrew Wilson, ID number B-267-52, then returned briefly to demand what he called a practical conversation about play, which ended up being a roundabout way of saying EA will be donating $1 million to various charities, before we were all thrown sighing and shrugging back into the Stygian abyss of sports games boredom by way of FIFA 17. Yeah, thanks EA, like I hadn't already worked my arse off to avoid any and all things football related this past weekend. Introduced by a first year RADA student pretending to be an aspiring footballer.
Now, I have the chance to make that dream my reality. To pull on a Premier League shirt and maybe even one day step into the center circle of Wembley. 3 lions on my chest. This is the start of my journey.
Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer by this son of York. Alas, as much as I wish I could skip over this part entirely, there was one tidbit I found surprising and vaguely interesting. Shocking, I know, but hear me out. You see, Titanfall isn't the only EA game getting a single-player story campaign. FIFA is as well, apparently. Called The Journey, it's a story-focused career mode in which you play as a young footballer called Alex Hunter trying to earn his first Premier League contract. You'll still be playing matches, albeit only as the aforementioned Alex Hunter, but the matches will be tied together with Frostbite engine-rendered story cutscenes and dialogue decisions, which certainly puts a different spin on the series, I'll give it that. How deep this story progression goes, however, remains to be seen. I doubt we'll see Mass Effect-style renegade prompts that let Alex bottle someone in a top London nightclub, or dialogue options to groom an underage girl for sex. After that, and with some blatantly scripted bants between Peter Moore and football man Jose Mourinho here, we finally escaped sports hell for another year, thank God. Just in time to catch EA's Patrick Soderlund talking about EA's new initiative, EA Originals. It's effectively EA's new indie game publishing arm, dedicated to, and I quote, supporting independent developers with first-time innovative experiences and bringing them to the world. Or in other words, EA helping small developers until they're big enough to shut down. Okay, putting my cynicism aside for the moment, the first game under the EA Originals umbrella is a charming looking affair called Faye, from Gothenburg-based indie studio Zoink. It's described as a wordless celebration of our longing to be one with the world around us, and much like Unravel last year, was presented by a nervous Scandinavian. Oh bless. I can't be mean here. Although Faye eschews the more blatantly cutesy and charming elements of Unravel in favour of a more ethereal, almost dreamlike ambiance, which is not to say Faye doesn't have a charm of its own. No, it's merely filtered through a layer of Journey and Ori and the Blind Forest, with a tiny, heavily diluted drop of Dark Souls added to the resulting mix. What else can I say? It looked lovely. Another game that I wanted to watch more of, to lose myself in the sheer audio-visual experience of it. Jesus fucking Christ. What is it with EA conferences and jarring tonal shifts? Ah. Bollocks. Jade Raymond, formerly of Ubisoft and now with EA Studio Visceral, emerged amidst the Star Wars cacophony to present us with a bunch of information about Star Wars games, obviously. I say information in the loosest sense of the word there because this bit was heavy on the spectacle and very light on nitty-gritty details. There was talk of a bunch of stuff being added to Star Wars Battlefront like Cloud City here, and a brief glimpse of VR stuff. Of particular interest to me, however, was Amy Hennig's Star Wars project over at Dead Space creators Visceral, of which this clip was all they bloody showed. All I can tell is it's likely set in the time period of the new trilogy and is in third person. In short, this segment was EA reminding us that they have the exclusive rights to develop Star Wars games. Except Lego Star Wars, of course. Finally, we came to Battlefield 1, DICE's fantasy reimagining of the war to end all wars, set in a diesel-punk Narnia full of giant airships that can still fly even with squillions of bullet holes in their balloons, stupidly unrealistically fast tanks, and thumping hip-hop soundtracks. DICE General Manager Patrick Buck stepped up to tell us all about Battlefield 1's dynamic weather systems, range of weapons and vehicles, destructive environments and other such gubbins, all apparently contributing to an experience
where no battle is ever the same.
Sorry Patrick, could you repeat that for me please?
In just a few minutes you'll get to see how no battle is ever the same.
Once more.
Variety of weapons and vehicles that ensure no battle is ever the same.
And then it was over, with Andrew Wilson, who, need I remind you, has seen attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion and C-beams glitter in the dark near the Tannhauser Gate, bringing proceedings to a close.
There's a lot more to come, and now it's time to play.
Whereupon the audience were torn to pieces, alive and screaming, by a swarm of robot dogs. Not really, although it would have made the event more memorable. Then again, there was this esports Burke who broke his arm because he hadn't bothered tying his shoelaces before racing someone. A lesson he clearly hadn't learned since he hadn't tied his shoes before going on stage either.
Didn't have your shoes tied. Are they tied now? No. No, they're not tied. All right, we don't want you to fall off the stage.
Learn to tie your fucking shoes, you pillock. That bit was during one of the sports sections, which still dragged on far longer than they needed to, even though there were only 2 titles, namely John Madden's Hand Egg and The Footballs 17. Maybe next year EA will finally realise the millions of faceless ghost people who buy their sports games rarely, if ever, actually watch these sorts of events, and will give us some more about their other titles. I wanted to know more about this Star Wars VR thing here, or Amy Hennig's new Star Wars game, but no, we've got to do the sports, haven't we? I'm also finding any enthusiasm I had for Mass Effect Andromeda withering for lack of tangible gameplay and story footage. We already know it's set in a distant galaxy, some familiar aliens are along for the ride, and we play as a brand new protagonist. Show us more completely brand new things, damn it! Finally, I really hope EA aren't trying to make nervous Scandinavian developer with a deeply personal indie project some sort of thing. The first time was a lovely, wonderful surprise, and the second was still charming. If EA keep doing it year after year, however, then it's going to start looking a wee bit cynical on their part. Faye still looked lovely though. In conclusion, this conference was unremarkable and mostly unmemorable. Less of a chore to get through than last year's, admittedly, but still with plenty of room for improvement. And with that done, I'm off to get some sleep before working on my next video covering Bethesda's conference, which I stayed up until godforsaken o'clock in the morning to watch. So I'll see you beautiful misfits then.